All right, everybody. Thank you for attending. I'll call the meeting to order. We're back in session again for our fourth and last 2022 budget session. I want to thank council administration for the work last week. We finished 9 o'clock on Friday night, and it was time for a break and come back good and fresh today and finish off where we the budget we need to finish off from. And at this point, I will let the listening audience at home know that both Councillor Barnhart and Councillor Tessier are joining us live through Zoom and will contribute as they're able to in their deliberations. Councillor Muckhoff-Swain had a previous work commitment he couldn't get out of, wasn't planning on being here, and then none of us were either actually, so he couldn't get out of his work commitment, so he sends his regrets, but he will be back for next year's budget, I'm sure, for all 3 evenings, and hopefully we'll done 3 evenings next year. But in the meantime, I will begin our process. Any word from Councillor Barnhart if she's able to be speaking to us if she needs to? Ms. Winter?
Yes, I can hear you, Mayor.
Okay, Kathy, you can hear us? Okay, good. I know Renee's already tested his mic. He's good. Renee, you're good?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good to go.
Thank you. All right. Having said that, we will begin where we left off on Friday night, and that was on page 87 of the hard copy, page 99 of your budget document. If you're looking online, it's the capital budget, and we are in the growth section. We will begin at the Rousseau school site, and we'll follow the same procedure, council. We are in the growth section. Any questions, concerns on each topic in the growth section, we'll take them as they come from council. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next section on utilities. Once utilities are done, we'll then entertain subsequent motions from council members on the capital budget that were submitted to administration during the last few days budget talks. So having said that, council, are there any concerns, questions, comments, or motions on the Rousseau school site, fleet equipment growth, recreation facility enhancements, traffic signal, and wayfinding signage program? Again, page 87 is the overall, and each page subsequent in the package that describes each section of the growth. Councillor McCook, you have the floor. Go ahead, Kat.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I'd like to propose a motion.
Okay.
Sorry, Shalane, I forgot to give you a heads up there. Came up a lot faster.
We'll take a second then for that.
I
motion
can
to be on
read
the
it off.
screen.
That by the end of Q1 2022, administration provide a report on traffic signals and wayfinding signage program, including examples of other municipalities who've implemented similar programs, the uptake of the programs, and the benefit of the program for Beaumont as it relates to adventure, recreation, tourism, and business.
Thank you. Please speak to your motion.
Just trying to get, I kind of understand the premise of it, just trying to wrap my head around it a little bit more, and just so as it's implemented and we go through it, I'm able to communicate to our residents a little bit more as to the benefits of it.
Okay, no problem. Any questions from council regarding the motion before you now? Councilor Newkirk, you have the floor. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I like the idea of asking for some more information on this one and some examples so that we understand what we would be doing, where would we be going. Subsequent question for you, Councillor McCook, would you also propose that we unfund the current $75,000 allocation? Are you thinking this motion don't approve the capital now, or do you want to approve the capital now, or would suggest that we approve the capital now and then also do this motion? Sorry, wasn't clear.
If I can assist with that, Councillor, if you don't mind. My understanding is that the motion would not affect the capital budget there to be part of a separate motion. So it's up to you if you want to have a separate motion. If you were anticipating taking out the 75,000, we should probably, I would think, get rid of the 75,000 first, then do this. Or CEO Schwartz, you have a suggestion? I'm not sure which button you are. Let me try that one. Is that you? Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw out the notion and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody else knows this, but I quite likely, as this is a 2-year project, that there have been commitments made against that other budget. So there may be either penalties or projects that would be canceled because of the 75. And I'm looking over at Aaron, who I don't know if he's had a chance to dig into that, but that's my understanding is these signs are being designed. So we could definitely bring back this information, but if we may incur some costs.
Okay. We would incur cost if the 75,000 was taken out of the capital budget, correct? I think that's, I'm not sure which mic that is. Let's try that one. There you go.
Yeah, to the mayor, or through the mayor to Councillor McCook, I'm actually not sure as a question, but essentially, it is as Mr. Swartz had mentioned that it's a 2-year program, so it's pretty much in flight. So there's things happening, there's commitments made. So the idea would be that we would like to proceed with that work. We're happy to bring something up with regards to the motion. I think we can definitely do that and show what we need to do moving forward.
Okay, so before I go back to Councillor McCook, I'll go to our city clerk for one final comment to give the chance to formulate an answer to Councillor Van Uker's question, okay? I'll get right back to you. Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for a point of clarification, depending on where council wants to go, I would feel that this motion falls more under subsequent motions. So I don't know if we want to have the discussion and move that down to a subsequent, depending on where council wants to go with that project.
Okay. So having said that, if Councillor McCook prefers to leave the 75,000 in here, then we simply vote on this motion now and want to set the apple cart. But if he wants to take up the 75, this should drop down to subsequent. Is that a fair assessment of your comment? Okay. Oh, sorry, I took your mic off. Sorry. So Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Yeah, it was my understanding that that the program had potentially already begun. So I was just looking for more information and understanding surrounding the program, just because I have really no idea about it. So it was more of an information piece because we had already committed to it. But if other members of council potentially wanted to discuss the 75,000, I guess that's on the floor. But my motion was more surrounding additional information and understanding regarding the program.
Okay, so to answer Councillor Manuka's question, you prefer to leave the 75,000 in there now at this point. It can be discussed after your motion is voted on. We can come back to it if we need to, but right now, leave it in.
Yeah, unless anybody else would like to bring anything forward regarding that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, no, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. Councillors Tessier or Barnhart, any discussion on the motion from your perspective? I see no hands up, so I'm assuming you're okay.
Mayor, Kathy here. Could you just repeat the motion that's on the floor? I'm sorry, I've been trying to get my technology to work, so I haven't been able to pay close attention.
Chillan, Councillor. It's a long one, so I'll try and not talk too fast. That by the end of Q1 2022, administration provide a report on traffic signals and wayfinding signage program, including examples of other municipalities who have implemented similar programs, the uptake of the programs, and the benefits of this program for Beaumont as it relates to adventure, recreation, tourism, and business.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, if you have no questions, Councillor Tessier does. So Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I more or less have a comment on it. I've heard and seen a lot of issues on the ice buildups for certain rinks that we're allowed to use or certain lakes, which is only Four Seasons Lake. I just had a comment on, I had a suggestion that I haven't brought forward yet that, that we have some better signage for certain lakes that we can and cannot use. I know we have permanent signage, but those signs kind of get lost in the mix with their placements. Like at Four Seasons, it'd be great to have an open closed signage. So when the rink is, you're allowed to be on it or you're not allowed to be on it. So yeah, I'd be in favor for this for sure. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, anything? You're good? Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So seeing no further questions or comments, I will call for the vote on this particular motion. And let me vote myself first before I go to Kathy and Renee. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
I'm in favor, Mayor. I think it's a good idea.
Councillor Tessie, how do you vote?
In favor, sir.
Favor, thank you. I'm seeing 6-0. Motion is passed. Thank you, council. Appreciate that. All right, the next, going back to any further questions on the growth component of the capital budget as outlined on page 87, hard copy, page 99, electronic copy. Councillor Van Newkirk, and I have a question after he is completed. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk. And just a question here. Can I don't have questions on the growth items there, but I do have 2 motions from before that I'd like to get on the floor. Do you want to do that in the subsequent motion portion, or do you want to do that now? They were both deemed to be growth area.
I would assume subsequent. Ms. Winter, would you agree? Subsequent would be sufficient for Councillor Van Newkirk?
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, right now, we're still dealing with our budget amendments that we have finishing up in this. So I would say if you have any actual budget amendments, we would deal with those now, and then we would move on to the subsequent motions later down in the agenda after all of the budget amendments are complete.
Okay, this would be for the capital budget. The 2 that I brought up before about the backfilled rink and the Green Shack program, those are the 2 outstanding motions that I would like to bring forward. I just look for the right time to do that.
Yes, I appreciate that. So having said that, I'm wondering if it's more subsequent than capital. What do you think, Ms. Winter? You want to take a moment to give some thought to that? So we'll follow procedure.
I have an answer for you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Anything that is going to affect the budget will need to have a budget amendment. Anything for subsequent motions do not affect the budget from being approved. So the subsequent motions are reports that are coming after the budget has been approved. So if you have any of your budgets that are going to affect and you're wanting to put dollars to it, Councillor, you would need to put those motions forward at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, having said that, are they part of this discussion in your opinion?
They're here, yeah.
Great, you have the floor, Steve.
Sounds good. Just looking for legislative services to post the backfilled rink motion, please.
And would that be under the recreation facility enhancements category of capital that we're referring to? Mr. Blanco, would you agree with that? I'm assuming that's the spot to have it.
Yes, that's correct. That would be the program level that this project would be grouped with.
Thank you. Your motion, Steve, please.
Yeah, my motion reads that administration remove the backfilled soil from the historical outdoor rink on 56A Street and restore as an outdoor rink in 2022.
Thank you. Please speak to your motion.
Yes, in our last session, I spoke to it a bit, but I'll just kind of reiterate what I said at that point. And the backfilling of this rink on 56A came as a surprise to many citizens, myself as well. I also acknowledge that the previous council, which I was a part of, approved the funds to do this. What I wasn't aware of is what was going to happen operationally, because we approved a lump of money to do that. So this motion here would be to remove the backfilled soil from that rink and restore it as an outdoor rink. And I didn't include a cost on this and look to administration for comment. The rink itself was backfilled using city equipment and city time. It wasn't a contractor. So I was hoping and assuming, that same equipment and time could be used to reverse this. But I would look to administration to see if there is a cost that's going to be associated with this as a capital lump here. So.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. Okay. Is there any suggestion from administration on the costs associated with this? Should council wish to pass this, it would have an implication on the capital budget. As we're discussing now, is there any way we can put a dollar figure to it? Or what's the procedure, Mr. Blanco? I'll put you on the spot if you don't mind. How to accomplish Councillor Van Newkirk's goal of this motion should it pass and still will fall within our budget parameters. How do we proceed, please?
Thank you. So in terms of attributing a dollar amount to this project, I'd defer to our Director of Infrastructure, but in terms of, what administration would recommend is that whatever dollar amount we attribute to it at this point, that it be subject to change as part of the amendment, just as we true up whatever that number would be. At this point, it would be a lower class estimate, and as we get more information, we'd be able to provide a better estimate.
Thank you. CEO Schwartz, you have a comment, and I have a question for Mr. Blanco in a moment here. If I got a follow-up question, CEO
Okay, and
Schwartz.
again, Aaron, feel free to interject. The cost is less capital, but it is operating. When we did a review of the number of outdoor rinks per capita and how they were distributed geographically across the city, if you recall, the Dansville boarded rink and the unboarded one were built probably 500, 600 meters to the west of this current rink. This rink then was relocated to the south in an area where there wasn't a rink. So we were trying to balance across our neighborhood. I will also add, and I know the mayor and I had chatted about this as well, that there are numerous residents in that neighborhood where the rink was removed that were very happy that it was removed, because it was in a congested area, pretty close to houses, and the noise and everything else that comes with an outdoor rink. In fact, when the crews were out there doing the work, they were buying them donuts and coffee saying, thank you very much. So you might want to take that into consideration if you're going to put that rink right back there. But the impact is going to be in operating and less about capital.
Mr. Lewicki?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Ben Newkirk. As Mike was saying, the rink was removed because of the fact that there's new rinks that have been added. So the idea was that the service levels for rinks has been replaced somewhere else, understanding that there's not a rink there now, but there is a cost associated with putting it back into service, right? There's equipment, gasoline, and resource charges and so on that would be utilized, getting equipment to site and so on. So there is a cost associated with putting something back into service. What those costs are at this point, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, we could figure that out, but I think the bigger implication is, as was mentioned, is that the idea was that we have the rinks that we have that service the community, and this one was removed because we added other ones, and some residents liked it removed and some want it back. So I'm not sure if it makes sense to put it back or if we leave it as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Lewicki. I will go to Councillor Miller for a comment, and then I'll see if Councillors Tessier or Barnhart want to weigh in on the conversation. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor, actually, just a comment in general. I am hearing that we are, that we kind of essentially replaced this surface with the one at Dansville, so that we didn't really lose an ice surface. The only thing that I see as a difference is that this one's the Dansville one's a boarded one that gets utilized more heavily by shinny and hockey players. And essentially we lost a skating surface for younger children. And that's what I see. A lot of the younger, the youth will migrate to those flooded surfaces because there isn't, a lot of pucks flying around and boarded. So this plays into my subsequent, motion that I'd be bringing up later on regarding a schedule and some other inquiries, I guess. But given what I'm hearing right now, I would be in favor of this motion. So thanks for bringing it up, Steve.
CEO Schwartz, you have a comment before I go to my other councillors that are on Zoom?
Yeah, just a clarification that we have the boarded rink at Dansville, and then we also have the unboarded one right next to it that we flood. In case you hadn't been out to that site. Yeah, so just a fact for you.
Okay. Councillor Barnhart or Councillor Tessier, you have any comments on this particular issue?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Kathy here. It's the first time I'm hearing that there were concerns in the neighborhood about the rink that was there. Up until I heard that comment, I was definitely in favor of restoring that rink. Does CAO Schwartz have any evidence of that? Is that just hearsay? Has there been any public consultation? Because I'm really leaning towards we we need as much outdoor activity as we can have, and it seems like that place is not being used for anything else to take its place. So I'd be in favor of putting it back in service, but not if there's a significant number of people that are unhappy with that.
Leo Schwartz.
Sure, and I'm not trying to deter that. I'm just trying to toss out what we've discovered in the process. There was no formal public consultation done. However, when the staff were out removing and backfilling the rink, that's when we had people come up and say, hey, thank you for getting rid of this. Now, whether that's the representation of the entire neighborhood, I couldn't tell you because we didn't do public consultation.
Thank you for that. So I suspect it wasn't too many people, it was a few people.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier, any comments on this one? I didn't see your hand go up or down, so.
Just a comment, you know, the only thing that worries me is I'm always in favor, like Kathy and Steve and Ash and everyone on council, about encouraging more services outside. The only thing I'm worried about is the exact thing CAO Shorts is saying is, you know, we take it away and we put it back. Is it going to make people mad or happy? So that's, I don't know. Has there ever been a process that, what does the public engagement look like? Can we drop off letters to those individuals and give them an opportunity for feedback, even if this motion goes forward, or how does that look?
Say Schwartz, you want to make a comment? If you don't mind, then I'll go to the next few people in line just to talk. Mike, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm just going to toss out the notion, perhaps we conduct public consultation before we make this decision.
Okay.
We can bring it back.
I appreciate that. If you don't mind, Councilman Newkirk, I know it's your motion. Councilman Cook wants to speak first, then Councilor Miller, then I'll come back to you if I could. Thank you. Councilman Cook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Dunn. I look through to Aaron, probably. How many rinks do we currently have for our community right now? Boarded and unboarded, I guess.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, I just have that information right here. So.
No problem.
So we have 3 boarded rinks. We have Monteley boarded, we have La Pointe, we have Bellevue, then we have unboarded rinks. We've got Monteley, we've got, apologize if I don't say this right, Mulot, Saint Fidel, Natural Park, and Montrose. Plus we also have this Lions Park skate trail as well as the Don Sparrow Lake.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Follow up.
Yeah, I just echo what Kathy and Renee said. I think I was for it until hearing that potentially some residents were concerned. So I like the idea of potentially getting a little bit of public consultation prior to moving on this motion. I don't know. Yeah, I also like Councillor Miller when she talked about having a schedule for the rinks, but I don't think we'll have that quite in time to decide for this. So I'm leaning more towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, then I'll go back to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a quick question for Mr. Schwartz. You said there is a rink beside the Dansborough one, and that very well may be. I just haven't actually seen it. Is it right beside it? Is that the Monteley one?
My understanding is it's right east and west beside it. I
Okay.
think we even put a pad there, but I'm looking for clarification. And I can get that within the next.
Yeah,
few
no,
minutes.
I'm not trying to disagree. I just wondering, I haven't actually been out there to see it. So I could
Yeah,
ask
it
my
was-
kids, I go to that school, so,
It
but I
was built to the
haven't.
immediate south of it.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So essentially there still is a flooded surface
Yes.
there. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
good to know.
You're good?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. If it's that pad directly south of the rink, it's a piece of asphalt as big as this room. That's what was there. It's a round piece of asphalt that's there. It's kind of like a skateboardy kind of thing. So it isn't substantial. But so that part I know that I've connected the dots. But I think the prudent thing here to do would be to swap this motion for one that directs to provide some public consultation on this. So perhaps we want to say that council direct administration to conduct public engagement surrounding the removal of backfilled soil from the historical rink and restoration in 2022. Something around that I think would be prudent.
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Winter, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. If I might suggest if Councillor Van Newkirk is willing to withdraw the current motion that's on the floor, and we could have that first quarter public consultation done as a subsequent motion as well later on in the meeting.
Sure.
So Steve, you prepared to withdraw your motion?
Yeah, I'll withdraw this one and we'll move it to that subsequent motion then.
Okay.
We'll forward you a subsequent motion for your review.
You betcha. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
Appreciate
Nicker.
the
This is
support.
a good example, listening to the community and bringing concerns forward. It's like we're supposed to do here. It's a great example of doing exactly what we're supposed to do. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. You mentioned having a second motion in this capital budget area. Please proceed.
Yeah, you bet. The second one that I had is around I introduced the idea to council of the Green Shack program last time around. I did provide that motion to legislative services if they could put that up. Thank you very much. So the motion would read that the 2022 capital budget be increased by 45,000 to implement a pilot program for a Green Shack program for outdoor youth recreation, similar to the program offered by the city of Edmonton. Thank you.
Please speak to your motion if you want to elaborate any further.
Yeah, you bet. One of the things that I've reflected on a lot on our last term in council is the work we did on plans and planning. And the document that I refer to most is our Places in Play Recreation Master Plan. And in the summary of some of the outcome right near the beginning for the public engagement part is, top program needs. And those top program needs were children and youth programs, arts and cultural programs, and spontaneous use. So I believe by trialing or piloting this type of a program, we'd be meeting, the children and youth programs and the spontaneous use. And I would also believe that the arts and cultural piece could be wrapped up into that. It just depends on our level of creativity with what we do. So the idea would be a CCAN type structure, with a staff, and it would have games and art and those types of things in it. And it would be placed probably most likely in Four Seasons Park, but administration could gauge where the best effort that would be. And it would provide an opportunity for spontaneous recreation. So I think it would be, I know there's big uptake on it in the city of Edmonton, and with the demographics in Beaumont being what they are, I would expect to see the same in Beaumont. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question for you, Councillor. So it is a portable type of program, right? It can go from spot to spot, and
That's
to
right.
encourage youth from different parts of our city to take advantage of it, or families in general.
Yeah, exactly. And, I would look for administration support on, if they thought it was better in this area of the community during this period of time, and that area of the community in that period of time, operationally, if this passes, it's a pilot. We would want to try and see what we can do to get the upkeep and get it going. So,
Thank
or
you.
the uptick, sorry.
If I may ask a question of administration, should this motion be carried, do we anticipate funding from reserves as part of capital? I'm assuming it would come from reserves. Mr. DeBlanco, if you could elaborate. Thank you.
Sure. So to the mayor, the answer to the question is the likely funding source would be something like pay as you go, which is tax levy funded capital for smaller items like this. Just to ensure we have these in the proper budget, the amount of 45,000, my understanding is that is for the capital piece as well as some ongoing, the operation of it. So what we would want is to see as part of the motion would be splitting out the two pieces. If it's, for instance, $10,000 for capital and then $35,000 for the ongoing operations of the program, that second piece would then be added to the municipal operating budget.
Okay. So if I may, for example, just be clear, it could be 15,000 towards operating and 30,000 towards capital. So our final number would be changed by 15,000 in my example of the overall tax levy for 2022. Is that correct? In that example I've given?
In the example you've given, yes, that's correct. It would,
Okay.
if there's an operating impact of capital from this capital project, we would then want to see the municipal operating budget increase to fund this program.
Okay,
Should it be
I
approved?
understand the logic of that, and it makes perfectly good sense. How do we, if I may, Councilor Van Newkirk, how do we assess a reasonable number based on this motion, a proper number to be allocated to operating? I mean, I just picked 15 because it's a nice round number and 30 for capital. How do you recommend we, because part of the voting should incorporate the tax implication of this motion. So what do you think would be a reasonable number that we could tack on this discussion for the motion, please?
My understanding is that the full amount of 45,000 is composed of a $10,000 capital ask as well as a $35,000 operating ask.
Okay. Bigger than I thought it was, sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Tessier, do you have any questions on this particular motion, given the information
Yes,
presented?
yes, I do. Yes, I do, Mayor. I'm in support of the idea totally, wholeheartedly. But I am feeling a little bit uneasy with the dollar amount. Had lots of experience with the Edmonton program. And I think Councillor Van Newkirk is right. This is something that would probably be very useful and very popular in our community. I'm just wondering where the $35,000, did administration provide that amount, and how many staff does that represent over what period of time?
Mr. Daller, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in terms of the $35,000, it did come from administration based on projected having 2 summer students basically running the program for 4 months. So roughly, you're looking at about $17,500 per student for the 4 months.
It's strictly based on a labor estimation then. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, does that answer the question?
It does, and I think that's reasonable for a pilot project. I think we do need to pay attention to what would we do if we didn't get the student grants, however, because that often is what happens. We start down a road and then the grant disappears. But I'm all for this type of a program, so I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Councilor Newkirk, is your motion? Oh, pardon me. Ms. Winter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Van Newkirk. If you're okay to amend the motion to include the capital budget of 10,000 and 30,000 for the operating.
Yeah, you bet. That's where I was going to go next. Yeah, just happy with the discussion around that. I thank administration for doing the work to figure out what that split looks like. I just want to acknowledge bringing up new ideas. That budget is cumbersome, as you can see, but I think it's important that we try new things sometimes, and we'll see how it goes. We'll get through it here. So,
okay, thank you, Councilman Newkirk. So we're going to amend the motion before us, and then I'll ask Steve to read the final motion, and then I'll ask for discussion. One last round of discussion, and then we'll have the vote on the motion. Let me know when you feel the motion is completed, Ms. Winter, on the screen. Steve, would you please repeat your motion?
yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk. So the amended motion would read that the 2022 capital budget be increased by 10,000 and the 2022 operating budget increased by 35,000 to implement a pilot program for a Green Shack program for outdoor youth recreation, similar to the program offered by the City of Edmonton. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. I'll take one last question. I think this is a very innovative program. Thanks for bringing it, Steve, to our attention. I think it's going to be very creative, and the youth people will enjoy this. I think it's a good investment for a pilot project. If it takes off, it'll be great going to the future. Thank you for your motion. Seeing no further discussion, I will ask for everybody to vote accordingly. I'll vote first, and I'll ask for our councillors on Zoom to state their votes. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
I'm in favor, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Newkirk, how do you vote? Your button didn't come through. It's okay. I figured you want to vote. Appreciate that. And I'm seeing a 6-0 vote in favor of the motion. Motion is carried. Thank you, council. Mr. DeBlanco, would you be so kind as to add the 35,000 to your ongoing total for our our tax levy increase? It will have a slight impact, I believe. I'm guessing around 2.35, 2.38. I'm not going to hold you to that. I like 2.4 better, but we'll see. Oh, sorry. You have the mic.
Just for everyone in the rooms and at home's information, we're at 2.4.
2.4. Okay, I'm asking you better in my old age. I appreciate that. Thank you, council. Any further discussion on the growth portion of the capital budget? I do have a question, if I could, on the Rousseau school site. Again, page 87, the hard copy, page 99 of the online version of the agenda for the budget. It is showing 2,200,000, and we then show that being funded by debt. My understanding is that that money will be recouped over time as that subdivision gets built out. Is that is my memory correct in that? Mr. DeBlanco, if you could enlighten me, please. Thank you.
To the mayor, in short, yes, that is correct. That debt would be then recouped from the developer over time, just as you said.
So it'll be paid back to us, I'm assuming, in lump sums as that subdivision gets built out, and that'll go right to get against that $2.2 billion debt as it's received by us in lump sums.
Depending on the repayment agreement, it would not have any effect on the operating budget, but yes,
Right.
it would get paid back over time.
Right. Simply goes down to retire that debt in lump sum as it applies. Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor McCook, you have the floor for questions on the growth portion of the capital budget.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Mine is surrounding the Bellevue outdoor rink replacement. Councillor Tessie had asked a question surrounding outdoor rinks and having a sports pad versus concrete pad. In response to that, it was stated that concrete pad allows for a wide variety of use. So I just have kind of a few questions around this. Can you expand what we use them for in the summer months? Have we explored the option of putting the sports pad in? And then kind of what's the rationale for the concrete versus sports pad?
I can try and speak to that through the mayor to Councillor McCook. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Councillor Tessier refers to as a sports pad. The concrete pad that we have on those boarded rinks, when we say it's for a wide variety of use, it's really spontaneous use. So you could skateboard in there, you could ride a bike in there, you could rollerblade in there, when it's not flooded with ice, obviously, or during the winter as well. You can play basketball in there, you could play pickleball in there, you could do a variety of things in there, and that's why administration had commented back that they're basically used for a wide variety of spontaneous use currently. The sports pad, if that's I can't speak to, and we have not looked at that as an option on those surfaces. It may or may not be applicable for flooding. It may cause issues. I don't know the story there. We'd have to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Suter. Catherine, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, anything, perhaps Councillor Tessier can touch on it a little bit. I believe it has been used in other areas. The base for it would be more, I guess it would have more give and stuff a little bit. So when it came to using it for pickleball and stuff, rather than just hard concrete, it would be a little bit easier to use. That was just kind of my question surrounding whether we've explored them or anything like that. Councillor Tessier, perhaps you can expand.
Councillor Tessier.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McCook. Actually, I do have a motion coming forward on that exact issue, so we can either put it forward now or discuss it kind of up to the mayor, I guess.
Sorry, Renee, say that again, please. Go ahead, please. Say that the last thing again you said.
I do have a motion to put forward in regards to that topic. Do you want me to do that now or keep going with the questions on it?
Questions for now, please. Motion will come in during subsequent.
Okay, so sorry, from what I understand, we are putting motions forward for the capital budget in these categories, no?
Correct. I may have misunderstood your question. I apologize if I misunderstood that. So if you're looking at spending money right now out of capital, now is the time to make a motion, I believe. CEO Schwartz, is that correct? Or Mr. DeBlanco, is that correct? Sorry. Ms. Winter,
My apologies, Mayor. I was just drafting a motion. If you could just please repeat the question.
that's okay. Councillor Tessier wants to put forth a motion that may affect the capital spending, so now's the time to do that, correct, as opposed to subsequent? Subsequent is not really designed to spend money, they're more report information, that sort of thing. So if his motion is related to spending money in capital, now's the time to do that. Is that correct? I believe.
Yes, Mayor. Subsequent motions don't affect the approval of the budget. They're just calling for reports to come back that could potentially amend the budget at a later date.
Right.
If Councillor Tessier has something that the budget needs to be amended, then he would definitely want to discuss that right now.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier. I misunderstood some of the discussion on between Kat and yourself. So if you have a motion regarding spending capital money, now's the time to make it, please. Which category does it apply to?
Okay, thank you. That answered a lot of my questions on it too. So just a clarifying question, say my motion doesn't have anything to do with spending the money right now. It's more or less of a report, which is a subsequent motion. But say you pass all the capital in here right now, can you still remove it when that report comes back? Like remove other items from the capital to be able to spend on the new motions once something comes back after the first or second quarter?
Just 1 second. CEO Schwartz.
Yes, council can certainly approve or disapprove or unapprove anything that they'd like with a motion of 4-3. What we would do at that point in time is assess what costs have been incurred and what work is underway and all of those types of things, which is, I'm sure, is what you're expecting. Unless Mr. DeBlanco had to say anything more to add.
Okay, thank you.
That answers my question. Thank you. Yeah, we can go back to the pickleball / sport pad. The only reason I want to tag on Councillor McCook's topic here is pickleball and sport pad. You know, it's not the same as concrete. No one's really biking or doing anything in there. I know down by the reservoir they have that kind of rubbery sport pad. There's a couple options for ice, whether that's those see-through tiles that they use, or I know that the pickleball people in that organization are looking for a place to go, but that's I'll leave that for a subsequent motion. So that's kind of where we're leading here from my perspective anyway.
Okay, thank you. Any further, Councillor Newkirk, you have the floor, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a question on the Bellevue outdoor rink, seeing so that's the topic right now. One of the questions I asked was around any of the designs to be shared to help council understand what we'd be getting for the 750. Being on the Sport Rec and Culture Board, I've seen a few renderings and I know that there has been some collaboration and work with Black Gold to get to this point. So I believe that number is a very informed number. It's just I don't know if there is any availability of some idea what we're going to get for that amount. So that's the first question. And then the second would be, have we received any commitment from Black Gold for them to share in any of the cost of this? So thank you.
Mr. Suter, that'll be your question to answer, I'm assuming.
I'll try, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Van Newkirk. The designs that you're referring to, Councillor, no further design work has been done other than what you would have already seen in the past. Until the project is approved, we won't spend or commit any more time to that. We have shared those preliminary designs that you referred to with Black Gold as well as the school, and they're still open for some conversation as about what it might finally look like. Yes, when we land on a potential agreement on how it would look and what amenities and whatnot would be included, we would obviously show that to council at that time. And as far as a Black Gold commitment, they're committing to just their capital commitment is not for the rink per se. It would be more just around their playground that they would have to deal with in that space as well, but not specifically to the rink.
Councillor, follow up.
Yeah, thank you. So at this point, we would need to ask Black Gold to commit to some funding for the rink or ask them to contribute to ongoing operational funding for the rink. Would we need to direct administration to make that ask, or how would we go about that? I would like to see and hear that conversation occur. Perhaps that's for when you bring a design back, just help me out.
Yeah, no, for sure. We could make a formal request. There's been some conversation and I don't know if they're able to commit at this point, but if this project were to go ahead, Councillor Van Niekerk, then I would imagine we can make a formal request at that time to see what they could offer us, both in terms of operating as well as capital contributions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further to that same discussion, Steve and I both serve on the same committee, and a big chunk of the money that's allocated for this project of 750 is to essentially demolish the existing rink and redo it, whereas the other two outdoor rinks were already on bare land, basically. So there's a significant cost to tear up what's already there, re-prepare the base, and then begin a new rink. So the number is larger than we probably would like to see, but a big chunk of that is in essentially deconstruction of the current rink, demolishing it basically, reclaiming the land, and then building a new rink on top of it. So it is a bit much larger project than people might think when it comes to refurbishing a rink that's been there since 1992. So that's some additional comments hopefully council finds useful in the discussion of the that rink replacement. Councillor Miller, you have the floor on this area of the capital budget. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Through to Mr. Suter. I just had a clarification question. Is this rink actually, is this money to just keep it at the same site or to actually move it down the hill? Because I believe there was talk at one time that it was actually being relocated.
Through there to Councillor Miller, we've looked at a few options there, and the prevailing thought at the moment with both Black Gold, the school, and ourselves was it would be remaining on the top plateau where it is. It would be smaller in size, configured to address the access that we currently don't have to maintain that site very well as drainage concerns, which have been an ongoing issue, and proximity for safety to the adjoining residents and the school. So looking further down also complicates it. On the other plateau, you've got a soccer field on the bottom. You've got two small diamonds that are actively programmed for minor ball at their lower levels. So if we take any space away from that, we're compounding other issues. So and plus access from the school. So the existing top plateau still seems to be the best as long as we address the concerns that have been clearly identified when we've reviewed this.
Okay, so the rink will actually be smaller, did I just hear you say?
Yes, it would be similar in size at the moment to what we built behind the Dance Row School. The rink that's there now is, if you look at that site, it's a substantial footprint on that small site, and it's basically got no room to move around it. So we're looking at reorientating it for safety, as well as shrinking it somewhat so that it's more usable space and dealing with some of the drainage that's been a concern there.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Tessier, any further comments? I have a motion to make myself shortly here in the capital area, but I'll go to you first. Any question or any motions you have on capital?
None for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. See no further discussion from council. Ms. Winter, would you put my motion on the screen, please? Thank you. I move that $100,000 be added to the 2022 capital budget to install lighting similar to the lights on the multi-use field on the tennis courts and the skateboard park. And I'll speak to my motion. This motion is designed for two reasons: to extend the use of both facilities for pickleball, for tennis players, for, of course, skateboarders, and so on. Also to increase the safety level of kids who are on the skate park a little longer than the tennis players are using on the skate park at night. I think having some lights there is a safety issue, also a concern from a overall safety and lowering potential crime in the area. That area is used in the evenings by a lot of youth, and I think having lights on there to extend the use of the park will help from a safety perspective. The tennis courts will extend use as well too. So I left the motion fairly wide open. When I say lights similar, I don't want light towers that are 70 feet high as they are in the multi-use field for obvious reasons, but the idea of tower lighting to illuminate the tennis courts and skateboard park is my objective with this motion. I'm anticipating that it'll be funded from reserve. So I'll ask Mr. DeBlanco if that is a way we could fund this as part of my motion discussion. I'll start with Mr. DeBlanco and then I'll open it to council for comments and concerns. Mr. DeBlanco.
To the mayor, to your question on reserves are as part of our reserve policy, we've allocated them towards renewal projects. This would be a growth project, so administration would recommend using a growth-related funding source such as grants or pay-as-you-go.
Okay, actually, I did mean grants, not reserves. That was my mistake. I did mean grants. We discussed this before and you said grants and I said reserves. So I apologize. I was looking for grant funding. Do we have capacity in our grant funding to do this at this point in time?
So the project itself would be likely under the required grant threshold, depending on which grant is being utilized. In terms of there being available grant funding, there is, but it's important to remember that a good majority of the amount available for funding with grants was pulled from future years, particularly with MSI.
Mhm.
So in terms of allocating a funding source, that's something administration can take away and bring back a recommended funding source for this, but it would likely need to be either rolled with a different project to create a program to meet the program criteria or some other mechanism or reallocate some funding sources with other projects, but it would be something that admin would come back with a funding source for.
Okay, so if we're clear then, should council endorse this motion and pass it, we could then look at the funding sources. And if the funding sources aren't to council satisfaction, we can simply not proceed if we want to and not affect the tax levy, correct?
That would be correct.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity. Open up the floor to council for questions on the motion, please. Any questions from council? Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. At first glance, I like what the intention of this is. We have heard from groups that lighting would be helpful, particularly on the, I believe the tennis / pickleball side of things, to try and use, you know, the beginnings and ends of the day a little bit more. That being said, you know, through the months when things are used the most, we actually have a whole bunch of daylight. We just got done hearing from resident concerns on the multi-use field lights, and I don't know that conversation is over yet. And at first glance, I'm there, but I'm starting to wonder as I talk through this and think about it a little more if we should examine what the type and style of lights and do a quick look at what the positive and negative outcomes of adding these lights could be. I think this is a different conversation than putting some, low grade lights along a trail for safety reasons. I think that when these lights are there, they need to be big and good and directed. But I don't know that we know the impact to residents on these yet. So I'm a little hesitant right now. I like the idea and I'd want to get there, but I'm a little hesitant just because I think that we should examine the feasibility of doing this, how many hours a day we gain, and I'm rambling now, so I'll stop. See what others think.
No, I appreciate the feedback. My thoughts on the residency issue is the configuration of the skate park and the tennis courts are a north-south configuration. There are no homes anywhere close to each facility. So I don't see an impact on residents because there's nobody actually backing onto these parks. But it's good to notice that it could be a resident concern. I appreciate that. I just don't think there would be as much impact to residents, but I do appreciate the caution on that note. Councilor Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. And Steve kind of took the points I was thinking and put them, into perspective as well. I am a little bit on the fence about this as well, because not so much about the residential concern, as you just reiterated, we're not really affecting the residential houses, but I do question the amount of, and I would maybe like to see something from possibly the RCMP or something of any activity that maybe happens after dark, because it does stay light out until about 10 o'clock. So I'm just wondering, is there a need for this surface to be, the skate park especially, to be lit after that time? What's the activity like there after that time? There's just a little there's a few unknowns for me, so I'm a little bit on the fence about this for that reason.
Appreciate that totally. I understand completely the concerns raised. Councillor Tessier, Councillor Barnhart, do you have anything to say, any comments or concerns on the motion before you at this point?
Similar comments, Mayor. Thank you very much for the comments made by Steve and Councillor Van Newkirk and Councillor Miller. I like the idea of the safety element, why I would suggest lighting is a good idea. But then when I think about really how much time would people be playing pickleball or tennis or skateboarding in the summer, beyond 10 o'clock, and of course the impact on the residents. So I would need more data on this to know where the need was being expressed and whether it was necessary at this time. So I would have to say I'm not in favor of this motion at this time, but I would be prepared to reconsider it at a later date.
I appreciate that. Councillor Tessier, anything? If not, that's fine. If you do, that's fine too.
No, I'm on the same page as the other councillors. I love lighting and extending the services, but I'm mostly worried about the winter sports for daylight. I heard one comment campaigning for tennis court lights, and I don't have kids old enough or know anyone at the skate park to really get a good feeling about it, other than what Councillor Miller is saying about safety issues. So if we could get some more public engagement or data, that would be very beneficial, I think, towards this motion.
Thank you. Councillor McCook, you have the floor, Kat.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I agree. I basically was just going to echo exactly what Councillor Tessier said. I initially really liked the idea. However, in hearing some of the other points and what Kathy said, I think maybe getting a little bit more information surrounding it. I know we talked about, I know Councillor Miller mentioned potential like light stands, portable light stands for some of the rinks and stuff. I don't know if maybe we would want to try it for a season, having some portable light or something, and see if actually people do use the courts past that time or anything like that. I don't know if that's an option or a path we want to investigate. But other than that, I would agree. I would like some additional information before moving forward with this. I know pickleball is big, and so sometimes I wonder whether we should invest some of this into potentially maybe pickleball courts or something like that, if that would be a better use. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Council. I do appreciate the feedback. So my inclination reading the room is caution at this point as opposed to looking to pass the motion. So if I was to withdraw the motion, we can read this topic anytime we want to. If the motion gets defeated, does that affect our ability to discuss this at a later time? Ms. Winter, your guidance on which best way to proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Alternatively, of what I'm hearing from council is that potentially they're looking from a report from administration. So procedurally, my suggestion to you would be to withdraw this motion and have a subsequent motion asking for a report to come back versus voting on this motion and defeating it.
Okay. Then having said that, I appreciate the guidance, and Council, I'm pleased to withdraw the motion as presented, and I'll reserve the right to introduce it as a subsequent motion this evening, or if we're pressed for time tonight, I'll put to notice a motion in a future council meeting. That'd be sufficient, would it not? Thank you. That's how we'll proceed. Thank you. Are there any further? Oh, sorry, Steve, you have the floor on the next topic, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to hear from administration a little bit on the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center concession upfit or fit up. There's $50,000 allocated to that. Just wondering, do we have a prospective tenant that is ready to move in there? And that amount, what is intended to, what do we get for that amount? And do we have a tenant? I guess I'll start there. Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councilor Van Newkirk, no, we do not have a tenant currently for that second concession space. I think that calling it the concession fit up might be a bit of a misnomer. We've got 3 leased opportunities in the building, 3 spaces that we would hope to lease. We're not sure which one of those would be going first through an expression of interest in 22. This 50,000 was sort of a placeholder, if you will, for tenant improvements to potentially work with the successful proponent to fit up that space to whatever business they bring in there. So it says concession, but it's really not just focused on the concession. I don't believe that maybe the first one that gets filled. There's two other spaces with opportunities that are coming that I think might take up before that second concession, because, to be frank, COVID has impacted, of course, the building and the use, and we've got one operator in there and they're not open all the time. The demand isn't there. It's getting better, but it's still not where it needs to be or where we hope it is for him. So the thought of opening a second right now, it's probably not going to be the first space filled. So that might give council a bit better understanding of what that money would be for, should we be successful with one of our other opportunities in the building.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that clears it up for me. Having that lump just directed at the concession, I was going to challenge a bit, but now knowing that it's going to be also allocated for, potential tenant improvements for the other two rental spaces that are there, I don't think I have a concern with that, knowing that. And, I don't know if we have an opportunity to rename this ask before the budget is finalized. It's concession fit up and other tenant improvements or something, just something to make it a little bit more clear, I think would help alleviate anything in the future. But yeah, I'm happy with that amount of money allocated to tenant improvements and such as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further requests to speak, Councilor Barnhart, Councilor Tessier, anything further on the growth part of the capital budget? Now's the time.
Yes, Mayor, I have a question, and it's potentially something I missed along the line here, but I see that the library expansion is unfunded at this time. That requires a motion then in order to be voted upon?
I'm seeing Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Through you to Councillor Barnhart. Yes, anything that is unfunded would require a motion to come before council.
Okay.
And I guess subsequent to that, just for clarification, if this were to be defeated at this time, then it would not be able to come back at a later date, or we'd have to wait 6 months. Is that correct, Ms. Winter?
Thank you,
Ms.
Mayor.
Winter?
Through you to Councillor Barnhart, it would be 1 year.
A year. Because I guess what I'll state what I'm concerned about is that I'm still wanting to hear how we might be able to work together with the arts community and the library together. And I'm just a little concerned about this one moving forward before we have the answers to that.
If I may offer an observation to that point, Ms. Winter or Mr. DeBlanco on procedure. Councilor Barnhart suggesting before we spend the money, we need to have more information from the arts community regarding the facilities and so on. We can still pass it right now, but we don't have to spend the money just yet, correct? There's no rush to spend the money itself. We just have to pass it tonight. And then this is for the construction papers, right? I said that poorly. The construction documents that they're looking for the project for the future. Is that correct? Mr. DeBlanco, can you offer some comments on that?
Thank you. So to the mayor, the ask is for construction documents, I believe,
Right.
specifically for the expansion of the facilities.
Yes, that's what I thought. Thank you. So while we're on the topic, I guess this is part of the growth unfunded. So if council were to pass this 210,000, as we discussed already, what is the funding source from that? I'm not seeing to the right on page 87, the funding source of the 210. Would it come from grants or would it be part of the operating budget?
So similar to kind of the question before, administration would have to take it back and then look at the available funding sources and then come back with a recommendation on that.
Okay.
As it is a growth piece, it would be likely to either be grants or it might have to be debt as well. So that would be depending on when we go back and we look at the capital budget in its entirety,
Okay.
looking at what the appropriate funding source would be.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Kathy?
Mayor, I'm wondering if this would be a wise one to put off until the spring, given the arts facility and the committee coming back, giving us an idea about what's happening there. I just don't feel like I have enough information to proceed, and I'd hate to have a vote and it not pass, because I do think we need to expand the library.
Okay, Mr. Dollar, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just wanted to chime in here a little bit on one comment that Councillor Barnhart just made around the arts facility. So and Mr. Suter may be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't expect that the Arts Committee is going to have a recommendation on a space coming back to council, certainly not in the first quarter of 2022. It's likely not going to be there until late second, probably early third quarter, I would say. So the alignment with that particular project is problematic, I would say. The other piece that I would just bring to everyone's attention here in the room and then listening is, administration did not recommend funding this because there's, from our perspective, some work required around looking at our city facilities in their entirety. There was a lot of questions asked by council through the question and answer period around city administration and the space constraints that we're faced with, not only in this building, but we're also seemingly kind of up against some constraints in some of the other facilities as well. And so when you look around the organization and around the city, I think it's a moment for us to pause and trying to create a better plan as it relates to our facilities as we move forward here. Childcare, I think there's some challenges there. Challenges here within administration. The fire hall is going to be, if they are not already, facing some challenges with regards to their space. Understanding the library has some challenges. And then you throw the arts conversation into the mix. And like I say, I think administration saw this as a moment in time where we could pause and come back with a more comprehensive plan for council to consider at some point in 2022, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Dollar. Kathy, I'll go to Steve now. Unless you have a follow-up question for Mr. Dollar on.
Well, I do, Mayor. I guess I would wonder then, I hate to leave the library hanging with no answer. And if I understand well, maybe I don't understand when it comes to capital, that might be significantly different than the library's operating budget. Because it's my understanding that we don't tell them where to spend the money. We either say yes or no to the amount. But could the administration please clarify when it comes to capital, does council have the ability to say, we'll give you money, but not to do this, to do something else? If you know what I mean. I hope I'm saying that properly.
Mr. Dollar?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Barnhart. The difference with the capital request is the library is technically in a city-owned facility. And so it's the city's building. And we get to determine what we do with the facility. Obviously engaging with the occupant of the facility. But this is where it is a little bit different between capital ask versus an operating ask for the library.
Thank you for that. And then, Mayor, what I would like to do then is as a subsequent motion, and I don't know what that would look like yet, but I would be pleased to make something that would bring back a report in the first quarter so that we have something to provide the library in terms of where we're going.
Okay, so hang on, Kathy, on that one, just 1 second.
Okay.
Councilman Newkirk, you're very patient. It's gonna be a minute to get to you, okay? So my understanding, Mr. Dollar, is it was unfunded for a reason, and I understand the reasoning. I do appreciate the reasoning for that. Could council bring this topic back to the spring budget review and at that time make a decision to fund it or not fund it at that point? Is that a possibility before I go to Councilman Newkirk? Mr. Dollar, please.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, if that's kind of the desire of council, that is something that can be considered in the first quarter of 2022 prior to approving the amended budget kind of in the April timeframe.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, we'll get back to you. Councilman Newkirk, you've been very patient. Thank you, Steve. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk. And Mr. Dowler spoke more eloquently than I would have there. I think that administration recommended this project to be unfunded for the reasons that he stated. I believe that if the project remains unfunded and council doesn't put a motion forward to fund it, that in fact is an answer to the library that the project isn't currently funded. If we put a motion forward and then defeated that motion, then we tie our hands to have that conversation for a year. We heard that, right? So my suggestion and where my head is at on this is that if it remains unfunded, that allows the conversation to advance itself when it needs to advance itself, when we have more information and all of those kinds of things. I think that there's some work that administration wants to do around space review and space planning. And, I don't know if that's going to require notices of motion or whatnot at future council meetings, but I don't know that right now is the time to do that. So for me, I think, this project remains, in my view, if this project remains unfunded, it is just that, unfunded, until such time that the conversation changes and we understand where funding come from or what space planning may look like, or some of these other pieces of information come to light. So for me, I'm happy, well, not happy. I want to see the library grow for the community. It's behind, but for right now where we're at, I'm content with leaving it unfunded. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
So at this point in time, I'm going to continue that we're going to leave library expansion unfunded at this point. It can be brought back to council in the spring budget review. If you have a subsequent motion on this, Kathy, you can bring that motion later this evening under subsequent motion section of the agenda, okay?
That's fine with me. Thank you very much. Appreciate the discussion.
Appreciate that. So are there no further questions or comments on the growth portion of the capital budget? And I'm seeing none. Councillor Tessier, one last question. You're okay? I'm assuming Sans is golden. It's okay. Just give 1 second, give you a chance there. Renee, I think you're on mute, Renee.
Sorry, I'm good, Mayor.
Thank you. I assume that you want to give you one last chance and then want to leave you out. Okay, having two on Zoom is sometimes hard to navigate, so I'll make sure no one gets left out in the conversation. Thank you. Then we'll move on past the growth section. So capital has been completed on renewal and growth, and we're now moving to the utilities section. Mr. Blanco, would you mind taking just a moment or two, if you could give us a quick overview of the utility budget, if you wouldn't mind? I forgot to ask you about doing that for me, so I'll put you in the spot a little bit, but I know you know stuff very well, so it won't take much to give us a quick recap on the utility budget before we move into questions from council. Thank you, Curtis. You have the floor.
Thank you. So yeah, just a quick summary on the utility budgets. As mentioned last week, so utility budgets are self-funded. There's no funding source from taxes at all. They're funded specifically through utility rates, utility fees, and for water, wastewater, storm sewers, and sanitary and solid waste. And that funding from utility fees funds the purchase and treatment of water and wastewater respectively from the respective commissions, as well as the solid waste contract, as well as transfers to reserves for repair and renewal of utility infrastructure.
Okay. So is there any increase in utility rates for our consumers this year in the budget?
So there would be and it's dependent on the individual commission, but yes, there's approximately depending on which utilities, a 3 to 5% increase in utility rates.
Okay. That's an expectation of the budget. Okay. Thank you. Questions from council on the utility budget portion of the capital? Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Tessier, do you have any questions on the utility budget, please?
None at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier, any questions?
Yeah, sorry, for anyone in the public and a little bit for myself, can you explain that 3% increase and say if we decided not to increase that to 3%, what would that mean?
So through the mayor to Councillor Tessier, once again, I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, unfortunately, but it, depending on whether it's water, wastewater, or solid waste. So those rates are calculated based on what it's going to, the operating expenses and reserve transfers required to maintain and operate the utilities. So it's not necessarily an amount that can be adjusted up or down depending on councillor, depending on whether there was you know, some service level decreases, but in terms of utility operations, that's not necessarily something that can be manipulated too well. The majority of the increase on any of these rates is tied to the water and wastewater commissions. So we get the projected increases to those rates strictly from those commissions, and then factor those into our utility rate model to set the rates.
Perfect. That answers my question completely. I just wanted to make that clear that a lot of those rates are set outside our control.
Mr. DeBlanco, thank you, Renee. You're done for questions? Just the one?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. DeBlanco, on page 8 of our budget is a ratepayer impact outline that you had prepared for us, and it shows on utilities 2021 1,360 in the example used for the impact assessment, and 2022 it says 1,480. I haven't got my calculator handy, but that, what increase approximately is that? It's showing 120 annually, about $10 per month. That's the chart I'm referring to. So what impact approximately percentage wise is that? That's what we're referring to, right? When you say 3 to 5%, that's the range we're talking about. Is that accurate?
To the mayor, yes, that's accurate. So if we took the numerator and the denominator, it would be higher than 5%. Yes. Sorry, I misspoke before.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That gives the ballpark. That's where we can refer to it in the budget on, it's on hard copy page 8.
Correct.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from council regarding the utility budget? And if seeing none, I'll assume that the utility budget will pass as presented, as we did with the capital budget that we've already gone through the last few hours here. Okay. Thank you very much. We're at 6:20. You know, I think now might be a good time for a quick 5-minute break. If I could call a recess for 5 minutes for environmental reasons. And we'll be back in 5 minutes, please. Thank you.